Welcome to Night Talks, the University of Florida College of Journalism and Communications talk show, produced by students for students. I'm Amanda Gauthier, a rising senior studying public relations, and our guest today is no other than the Dean of the University of Florida College of Journalism and Communications, Hub Brown, who has more than 15 years of experience in reporting, producing, and anchoring for commercial local news and in public television. Hi, Dean Brown. Thank you so much for being here today.
It's great to be here.
So I would like to start by asking from your earliest interest in the communications field. Did you always have a passion for storytelling?
No. No. I think my earliest work in communications actually was in high school. Wow. So the high school that I attended in Omaha, Nebraska, had a radio station in the basement, and it was the NPR station for the community. Oh. And so I was part of a group of us basic radio geeks that wound up in the basement of the high school every day while other people were doing things outside. And we were doing board shifts on the radio station. We would do news. The first program I ever produced, I produced when I was 17. Oh. And that sort of began my interest in broadcasting in the beginning. And storytelling came later, when I could see what was possible, what was available. I started out in college as a political science major, thinking, boy, I'm going to go to law school and all that fun stuff. But as soon as I got to campus at Howard University, which is where I did my freshman year, as soon as I got to campus, I looked for the campus radio station. And I was back with my people again. Yeah. But that's when I think getting the journalism bug happened. That's when the storytelling started, and it just went on from there.
Yeah, that's how I feel as well. I think when I started my career, it was also joining people that like the same interest.
Yeah.
So it's great to hear that. You earned both of your degrees at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln. How did your time as a Husker shape the path that you're on today?
It's interesting. I transferred to Nebraska, which was closer. I grew up in Omaha. I transferred down the road to Lincoln after that freshman year. And a year and a half after that, I was working in a television station and going out on assignment and shooting video and beginning to do those things, doing sideline camera at football games, doing all kinds of things like that. And so it was the chance to go to a place that had a journalism program that was really focused on getting their students out in the world, getting them into internships, getting them with their hands-on equipment that was sort of rocket fuel for me, and really sort of set me in the direction of being a broadcast journalist.
I think that learning from experience, it's one of the main things in communications. On that note, you've been in academia for a while, and you started at the University of Nebraska. What prompted you into going into academia rather than commercial media?
I'd been in commercial media, commercial and public television, for a number of years before getting sort of the teaching bug. And so what ends up happening is this, and it happens to a lot of us who are teaching. You're out there, you're doing a lot of work in the field. Somebody comes along and says, would you, I don't know, maybe like to be an adjunct for a course, that we need somebody to teach this one course. And you get in there, and a storyteller likes a good story, whether they're telling it or whether they're hearing it. And the stories of the students are what hook you into teaching. That's what gets you into it, because you hear their ambitions, you hear what they want to do, and you are the conduit to help them get there. And that's how you sort of get a little bit, a bit hooked. And so in Lincoln, I was working for the CBS affiliate there, and then later on for the public television, the statewide public television network, and I did documentaries there. I did public affairs programs, those sorts of things, covered sessions of the legislature and all that. But the stories around people developing and getting their talents and things like that in line at the College of Journalism was what sort of kind of hooked me in. And so, yeah, adjunct, and then I'm standing in for somebody for an entire semester, and then I'm a lecturer, and that's how it took off.
That's a great journey to start with. I think that it's really important to build up that passion in students from their instructors. So it's really nice to see that. You mentioned that you were working with the CBS affiliate there and that you had so much experience in commercial media. What are some of the most important stories during your time covering political and state government news?
A lot of it was around, big campaign issues and things like that. I did a lot of politics. Lots of races for governor, for U.S. Senate. Saw the rise of a number of politicians out there that became major factors further on down the road, and those were a lot of those were the really big issues. You do a lot of different. If you're a general assignment reporter, you're going to do a lot of different things. You might do the crash, the automobile crash or some crime or something like that, or you might be the first reporter in the middle of some major scandal, and there's all kinds of stuff in between, including the stories that make people smile.
Right.
And really, for me, I think a lot of the bigger stories were the ones that had that broad sweep, that had the impact for so many people in a region or in a state. And I got to do a lot of that. I did a lot of work around big state issues. There was a big environmental issue some years back about a nuclear waste facility and what that was going to do to local ag producers, local farmers in different places, and whether that was going to be something that was going to affect their lives. And it was part of a statewide initiative, and getting to know the stories of the people doing that, in the middle of that, being affected by that, that's what's important about it. There are, what a lot of us who teach in broadcast journalism said over the years are that there are no boring stories. There are only boring treatments. If you don't see the value of a story for what it is for those individual people, you're going to need to learn more about being a storyteller, because it's really about the individual people in those stories. That's what makes the biggest difference. And those are the types of stories that I would do.
Did you face any significant challenges in your roles in front of or behind the camera?
Yeah, there are a lot of challenges. I think one of the bigger challenges is being pigeonholed. There were not, and still are not, nearly enough journalists of color out there doing this job. And there was time when I was maybe one of just one, the only black reporter in a newsroom, or one of two, that sort of thing. And the urge was often, well, there's something going on in the African American community. Why don't you go cover that, And my response to that was, well, no, I'm pretty familiar with the issues in that community, but you aren't. Maybe you should cover that and learn something. Because I think it's important for everybody to be able to be conversant about issues in all kinds of diverse communities. Educating people to work in situations where you do have to sort of flex that muscle, understanding diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's for everybody. That is a skill that African American students, Hispanic students, Asian students, and white students can all learn and be conversive in different kinds of cultures. And so I said very early on, no. Yes, I'll do those stories occasionally like everybody else, but I'm going to do the government stories. I'm going to do the politics stories. I'm going to do the stories that are going to have other types of impact, and not just on particular communities. There are lots of blind spots in journalism. The old stories around the fact that so many times when journalists would do stories about how the economy is affecting people, and we see that now with higher prices, and they go into a grocery store and they interview only women, who they assume are, mothers who are buying groceries for their families and things like that. Well, men buy groceries too. Men raise families too. Why aren't you interviewing other people? And not just some guy who's looking to buy a car, but some guy who's looking to make ends meet. Right. Break out of the molds. That's what's the biggest challenge. And so when you talk about what those kinds of challenges are, the biggest challenge is to break away from those old ways of thinking that really have hamstrung us in this country.
What does DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, play into role in a top academic institution?
What it means is that across the board, we are looking forward and not backward. What it means is that we look forward in this college and in this university to an America where there is going to be, and demographics say this, where there is going to be no one dominant majority of people in this country. That's what's going to happen. It's demographics, and you can't stop it. And the fact of the matter is, we should embrace it. We should be embracing these kinds of things, mainly because it is, number one, the future. And number two, it creates tremendous opportunities for everyone. Everyone to be able to actually get into and understand each other's stories, learn from them, and use those understandings to generate new knowledge, to generate new activity, and to move forward in the future. To understand that this is the way towards a better nation with more opportunity for everyone.
Which courses did you teach, and what did you most enjoy about teaching?
What I taught the most, especially in 25 years at the Newhouse School of Public Communications at Syracuse, were the broadcast journalism courses. The two courses that I most taught were television news reporting course and the television newscast course. And at Newhouse, if you were a broadcast journalism major, every broadcast journalism major had to take those two courses in addition to some other ones. And so pretty much everybody went through the program in that way. And in the newscast course, which is the one I probably taught more than any other, it really was about crafting a show from beginning to end. It was about producing. It was about figuring out how best to take a show and make it really relevant with all of the high-tech stuff put in there. The reporting course was one that I really, really enjoyed as well, because that's the storytelling part. And that goes back to what I've spent most of my time doing professionally. Was crafting a story from beginning to end and understanding that telling a broadcast story is really about understanding that visuals are a language of its own, and that every story has a beginning, middle, and an end. Every story has a way to pull you in. If you use it, it's just a blank palette, and whatever was on that canvas, it's what you put there. And television news stories they are both art and science in a very, very interesting way, and so I've always really enjoyed teaching that.
How did your experience as Associate Dean for Research, Creativity, International Initiatives, and Diversity play a role into preparing to become the Dean of the College of Journalism and Communications?
It was excellent preparation, and I think that one of the reasons why is because we had a number of different initiatives that we wanted to sort of move forward with faculty, staff, and students. And you really do have to figure out how to get buy-in. You have to figure out how to bring people along and figure out how to really stay the course on something you really want done. Because in the academic institution, things can move kind of slowly, maybe too slowly. And so you get a sense of how to move things a little bit quicker, and you get a sense of a little bit of a grocery list. Hey, if I were ever dean, this is what I would do. And so at the Newhouse School, it was a real challenge to move things, like it is in any institution, but there was an awful lot of reward. We were able to lift the international initiative profile of the school. We were able to do a lot in the DEI space in terms of increasing the amount of curriculum that students experienced in DEI, as well as increasing the numbers of students and faculty and staff. And in the research space, professional schools always have a challenge in terms of keeping the research level up and prominent, and giving people incentives, giving faculty incentives to do more and more, and to work together, and to find ways to maybe generate or regenerate a project. Those are big challenges, and those were very rewarding to be able to get done.
So you've been at the CJC for about a year now. What are some of the highlights so far?
Well, I think the biggest highlight is just getting to know the students, getting to understand what the ambitions of students, and to see that there's an incredibly talented bunch of students here. They just have this limitless energy, and they're doing some very original things, and it's very cool to watch. And it's very cool to be able to do things that help enable them to do more. And so that's been probably one of the biggest highlights for me, is just to get to know the student community. We have an amazing faculty and staff here. Seeing the level and the impact of the research, which really does inform teaching. It's a valuable thing for the students of this college to have and to experience. Seeing that has also been very, very, very stimulating for us. And the big highlights are really sort of moving projects ahead. We'll be opening up a social listening lab in the fall, and I'm excited about that. I think that's going to be a great thing. And we have a few other projects sort of, that are in the wings as once we get that off and running. And so being able to make a difference in those kinds of areas, that's why I'm here. It's what we want to do.
So how do you define your role as dean? What are some of other top goals that you plan for the college?
So as dean, I think you have to do a number of different things. You have to be an enabler as a dean. You have to make sure that you can help provide opportunity. You have talented people in the college, tons and tons of talented people, faculty, staff, and students. And what you want to do is bring people together, have conversations, move forward on our goals and objectives, and be the enabler to try to get things, resources to people, get energy to folks to be able to do the things they really want to do. And so that's really at the center of it for me. It's important to listen. It's important to understand where people want to go and what their desires are, and engage conversations about how to move that forward. The leading a college is really about staying in conversation, staying in communication with people, and facilitating what we as a community want.
You're also involved with organizations such as the Hearst Journalism Awards, the National Association for Black Journalists, the National Association for Hispanic Journalists, and the Broadcast Education Association. What value do these organizations bring to our field, and what prompted your participation?
Well, I think every one of those is a little bit different. The Hearst Awards are considered the Pulitzer Prizes of journalism for college students. They're the highest awards in the country for what college journalists do. And we want to be a part of that here at CJC, because CJC is a prolific winner in Hearst competitions. This year alone, CJC was #2 in the country overall and #1 in the country in the intercollegiate writing competition. And so those are very big kudos. Those are very big things. We want to be a part of that. As for the advocacy organizations like NABJ, NAHJ, the voice of professional journalists of color is going to be more and more important as time goes on. It's incredibly important at the moment. I think we need to be participants in NABJ and NAHJ and the other journalism organizations for journalists of color, the Asian American Journalism Association, the Native American Journalists Association, the National Gay and Lesbian Journalists Association. Those organizations, if they're not there, then what is lost is a voice for how journalists of color, journalists from diverse backgrounds, interface with the profession of journalism. It is different. It hits differently. And there are different professional experiences. And to have organizations that advocate for those groups is an important thing in our field. Without it, I think that we end up with a profession that is less likely to do what it purports to do, which is to tell the story of people around the country. And so we need to be a part of those kinds of things. I've long been a member of the Broadcast Education Association, and I think that BEA has been really, I think, incredibly important in advancing the interests of radio and television journalists and the work that they do, and to lift the quality of the craft and to continue those kinds of conversations, and to have a conversation between the academy and the profession. A lot of folks want to have this conversation about, well, are we much more academic, or should we really go the professional route? And our tradition in journalism education has always been that these two things go hand in hand. That telling somebody they must either be a total research institution or a total professional institution is telling them what arm they can live without. And I think that that's the kind of thing that you don't want to do in a situation where you have both. What you want to have in BEA and in other places like that is a voice for academics who are working on professional projects, and professionals who want to make that transition into academia.
So we'll learn everything about Dean Hub Brown, but who is Hub Brown outside of the dean position? Well,
I'm a father and a husband. I have 3 daughters, and they're in 3 different places now. My oldest daughter has a child of her own, so I'm also a grandfather. My middle daughter is still in Central New York, going to college at Syracuse University, and then my youngest is with us here in Florida. My wife is very much involved, and she's a very professional person in communications as well, working here at the University of Florida. And so, we're a family doing a lot of, really big things. And I'm a nerd about a lot of things. I read a lot of nonfiction, and a bit of a sports guy. I love baseball, and so I will rejoice in the fact that I am once again at a university that has a baseball team, and so a big bit of a sports fan as far as that's concerned, and just love to just to spend a little bit of downtime with the wife and kids, and cook out. I'm the guy who cooks the meat. So there is that. But so it's just basically having fun and those sorts of things, and getting a chance, when I get a chance to relax, just to pull back and catch up on the reading of major issues and things like that. Like I said, bit of a nonfiction reader, but still, I enjoy just catching up.
The communications field is a competitive and evolving field. What advice would you give students that are getting started?
I would say, first of all, don't be shy about getting out there, asking for help, finding your people, finding like-minded voices out there who might want to work on projects with you. A lot of our journalism these days, it's pretty much a team sport. Especially on the broadcast side, it's very much team-oriented. And so I think that finding those folks is an important thing. Be informed. When we are doing this, and it doesn't matter whether it's journalism or public relations or advertising or whatever it is, we are the folks who are out there communicating with an audience, telling stories about an audience. In order to do that, you have to be informed about what is important to that audience. So not knowing what the news is, not knowing what's going on in a community is going to be a hindrance to you. You need to be able to know it, and you need to be able to know it in any communications discipline whatsoever. You're talking to people about their lives. You need to understand what their lives are like. And so that's one of the bigger things. And the corollary to that is learning to be in the mass communications business is learning that all of this stuff is not about you. It's about the people. It's about the folks that you are out there communicating to and for, and on whose behalf you do this work. Because a more informed public is a public that is better able to buy the products your advertisers are selling, better able to understand the causes that your public relations agency or organization is working on, better to understand the issues so that they can be more informed citizens. You know, so understand that it's not about you is going to be very, very important when it comes to that.
Well, thank you so much for all your amazing responses. I think that we've gained a lot of great insight. It was incredible to learn about all of your journey in education and in the broadcasting world. And thank you, our viewers, for joining us. Until next time, and good night.